So the secret to better meetings is actually hidden in our own biology. Let me explain. Have you ever walked into a room and you felt a sense of safety, a sense of belonging because of how things were being led? Have you ever been a part of a community where you were able to be at your best, or a part of a team, or a meeting, or a training, or a workshop where you were able to find your creativity because of how everything was orchestrated? You see, it's not luck, it's chemistry. I want to share with you an inspiration for this video comes from several weeks ago. I was reading a newsletter, and the newsletter is called The Digital Contrarian. And it's published by a friend of mine and someone who I've learned a lot from, Ryan Levesque. Ryan is a 7-time Inc. 5000 CEO and is really taking a stand for how in this age of AI, when everybody is zigging, maybe some of us should zag. In other words, he's really looking into what happens if we take a stand for our humanness. I'm going to show you, he published a newsletter that was titled The Trust Molecule, Why Oxytocin, Not Dopamine, Will Define the AI Era. I'm going to show you 5 ways that we design or facilitate experiences that really optimize for oxytocin. But let me first share with you, right from Ryan's newsletter, a couple of key points. In a world built around dopamine, oxytocin might just be the brain molecule that matters the most. He goes on later on to say the businesses that win will be the ones that feel the most real. Now, before we get to the 5 ways I'm going to share with you to optimize any meeting for oxytocin, let's understand something for a minute. When we trained the master faculty at Keller Williams how to design or how to lead powerful learning experiences, there's a reason that Papasan said, I have never seen psychological safety at such a large scale. By the way, it was rated the highest rated training in their history with this particular group. When we led 3 years consecutively the CEO Summit for Conscious Capitalism, upon the completion of the first year that we led this event, one of the attendees said, John, this truly was a healing experience. There's a reason why. When Dr. Dan Reidenberg, who was in the room when we facilitated a high-stakes summit at Facebook, he pulled us aside at one point and said, I have never seen a method that creates human connection like this. You see, every one of these examples is all acknowledging a biological experience. And if we're talking about oxytocin, let's understand that oxytocin is the neurotransmitter that reduces the activity in the amygdala that is synonymous with the experience of psychological safety. You may be familiar with the research that correlates eye contact with this neurotransmitter oxytocin. And maybe just like in any system, it's not linear, it's a loop. Maybe if we turn people to each other, we can provoke the neurotransmitter, which in turn helps us feel even safer connecting with each other. When we create the conditions for a regulated nervous system, for the neurotransmitter of oxytocin, we're really unlocking the ability for human potential to come alive. We're unlocking the ability for us to think, to create, to solve, to connect, to collaborate. All these things that we say are important. So I'm going to give you 5 ways right now to optimize your meetings for oxytocin. Number 1 is what we call a priming experience. Now, let me explain what this is, and then maybe I'll give you a story as an example. So here at Xchange, we lead trainings and workshops and events, our own and for our clients. Oftentimes are 2 or 3 day events, online, in person. We've done hundreds of them. And it is very common for us to lead what is called a priming experience. So what's a priming experience? Well, if the main event is happening here, then maybe a week or 2 before, we'll bring everyone together, often online, for maybe an hour to 90 minutes, and we'll create meaningful connection during that priming experience to provoke and promote this biological experience of oxytocin and safety, which creates momentum prior to the main event, right? If you're wondering, well, what does that look like? What does that actually mean? Well, let me give you an example. If I was running one of these priming experiences with a group online, what it really means is we're meeting on Zoom, but we're pulling them out of the main Zoom room and we're putting them into breakout rooms. And in these breakout rooms, we may be having small group conversations where participants are connecting around their purpose for coming to the event, their intentions for how they want to show up, their highest hopes and aspirations. You see, these small group interactions a week or two prior to the main event start to create the conditions for connection and trust, which makes everything else that matters possible when we come together for the first time. The second idea that I want to share with you is about the culture that creates the culture. You see, what I'm really talking about here is when we host a meeting or we put on an event, there's a person or a team that has an outsized influence on all the attendees. The person or the team that has the outsized influence on the attendees is whoever or whomever is the host of the event. So in my case at Xchange, this is our team. We have a small, humble, but mighty, world-class, incredible team. And there may be a dozen of us, and you may be watching this, and maybe it's just yourself. But the bottom line is you can still apply the principle of the culture that creates the culture. You see, here's the thing. Some would call this the effect of emotional contagion. Others would maybe reference the research coming out of the University of Michigan on the effect of a positive energy network. In systems thinking, this is called reciprocal causality. You move all the names and all the jargon to the side. Here's the bottom line. Whatever state of mind, whatever presence, whatever way of being is living inside of whoever is leading a group, whoever is welcoming that group, whoever is serving that group, will affect everybody who comes into that experience. So guess what? Our team, before we're asking them to positively affect all the attendees of any meeting we host, guess what we're doing? We're pouring into our team. You've heard this before, that if you treat your employees really well, they treat customers really well. There's a sensible sequence to this, but we can forget that when we put on different types of meetings, trainings, workshops, that there is an outsized influence that those who are putting on that meeting have on the entire meeting and everybody else. So we facilitate connection experiences. We're concerned for the well-being, the nutrition, how much sleep our team gets. I mean, everything that matters for everybody, it matters most for the team putting things on. We'll have small group conversations before everybody else shows up where we connect to each other around our purpose, our intentions, our hopes for the event before everybody else starts to show up. The culture that creates the culture. The third idea I want to share with you is all about the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect, what we're talking about is the very first touch point that sets in motion the rest of the experience. It's the very first moments of arrival that set the conditions for everything that follows. By the way, this applies online just as it does in person. We run a lot of events, hundreds of events a year online. And when people log in, what do they see? What do they hear? It all matters. When they walk in the door at an in-person event, what do they see? What do they hear? What do they feel? Everything matters. Can I give you an example? When someone walks into the doors of our annual in-person event, they're going to see, first of all, posters with the headshots and the names of every attendee. What message does that start to send? It sends the message that this event really is about you, the attendees. Look at the name tags. Our name tags actually have a headshot of every single attendee. Sometimes we have to use front and back, but it sends a message that this is about you all and what happens when you connect with each other. This is what they're seeing when they walk in. But even more importantly, if you look at these photographs from participants registering and checking in, now you might look at that and say, well, John, it just looks like any other event where I'm checking in or registering. But if you look closely, you're going to notice these are not paid actors. These are actual attendees. And you will notice that there's an emotional tone in every one of these photographs. And I will tell you, it's not happening on accident. It's happening by design. Because the way that our team is greeting everybody, the way that we're engaging and facilitating conversations during the check-in, it is all intentional. It is all knowing that the first conditions, the first feeling, the first biochemical reaction somebody has is going to set in motion the next 3 days. The butterfly effect matters. The fourth idea I want to share with you has to do with how we set the physical spaces that we meet in. So this is particularly talking about meeting in person. Now, I'm just going to use some photographs to help make the point, but you'll notice when you look inside the room, what do you see in terms of how we set the chairs? So you may pick up on this, that the way we set the room, all eyes are able to see into all eyes, circles instead of rows. Now, if I were to show you photographs from later on in the event, what you'd notice is it's not just how we set the physical space, but how we move through that space. My encouragement is this: remember that everything somebody sees, hears, and they feel has an inseparable effect on their biology. So from the natural lighting that's present, to the sound or the choice of music, to how we orchestrate the way we move through a room, it all matters in helping people to feel connected, that sense of trust and that sense of safety. I want to share the fifth and final idea. If the fourth idea has to do with physical space, the fifth one has to do with how do we move through time within that space. And I'm going to show you a couple photographs because what we do at Xchange is we are always prioritizing for experiences that connect participants with each other. So when everyone's in the room, all eyes can see into all eyes. But when we start moving into different exercises, you're going to notice there's a geometry to what we do. Sometimes it's pairs, sometimes it's groups of threes. Sometimes they're getting into groups of four and they're providing peer coaching with and for each other. You know, when we can turn the audience or the room into the stage, when we can turn the learners into the teachers, peers into guides and coaches with and for each other, what we're really doing here is we're now designing and facilitating an event where human connection is not left to the cracks and the crevices. It'll happen during the break or over the meal or the open happy bar hour. No, the human connection is designed into prime time. And we can still have presentations and inspiration that comes from the main stage. But if we want to optimize for oxytocin, we have to put connection at the center. In an upcoming video, I'm going to show you how we're now also using artificial intelligence to gather information ahead of time and then help ourselves as the convener, but also the attendees to curate who is connecting with who. That's exciting. The frontier of taking the best of artificial intelligence with unlocking our biological wisdom when we optimize for oxytocin.